My friend made a great ancestry calculator based on modern scaled global 25 coordinates. And uses, um, he selects certain ancient references from the Global 25 database for scaled averages, ancient scaled averages, and I think he does a really good job at selecting these ancient references, ancient samples based on regional differences, so there's no overlap. And I just wanted to share my results because, as you know, I'm 100% or close to 100% Ashkenazi Jewish. That's what the DNA results show. That's what my family history shows. That's who I am. So, um, again, I've always wanted to try to explore and look into what sort of some of the admixture components that's underneath the Ashkenazi category, the ethnicity, Ashkenazi ethnicity. And I think this does a pretty good job for me. I'm very pleased with the results. And I'm also going to show you some comparison results as well for averages with other populations. But first of all, let's take a look. And I'm going to show you he makes a really cool video too. And you can see some of the ancient references that were used. But before we play the video, I'm just going to show you this this really cool map that that he makes. And I'm just going to zoom in here. As you can see, it's a pretty good fit. 1.7637. That's it's a really good fit. So it basically shows my two biggest components are Levantine, Middle Eastern, and Greek. And those results are not surprising to me at all, given what we know about historical migrations of Jews, that Ashkenazi Jews largely descend from Hellenistic Jews and Roman Jews in the Mediterranean Diaspora that were heavily influenced by Hellenism, by Greek culture. We know that the Hebrew Bible was translated into Greek, the Septuagint, and we know that there were Jewish communities across the Mediterranean world, in various Greek cities, in Alexandria in Egypt, in Antioch in Syria, in Cyrene in modern day Libya, in what's considered today modern day Greece and the Greek islands, in Italy, Rome, southern Italy, in Anatolia. So these were all Greek areas. So the Greek is not, and also there were Greeks in Israel too, or genetically Aegean Greek type people. We know the Philistines were most likely from Crete, from the Aegean, and they mixed with the Canaanites, and we know that from ancient DNA samples as well. And we know the archaeological evidence is all over the land of Israel of the Greek Hellenistic influence. So 28.8%. So we got Europe 51%, but most of that is Greek at 28.8%. Now we can see the Levant, which I believe is the original ancestry, the original Judean ancestry of Ashkenazi Jews at 42%. And we see a minor Mesopotamian Western Iran at 2.2%. I don't know where that comes from, but kind of interesting. The East Asia at 0.8%, we'll get into a little later. And then the Africa Maghreb, which seems to be pretty consistent. I actually get on the lower end for Ashkenazi Jews at 4.0%. Now, my friend thinks who made this ancestry report, thinks that might have come from the Jewish communities in northern Africa, in what I was saying, in Alexandria, in Cyrene, in the Mediterranean basin. There were possibly like Berber tribes, native North Africans who joined the Jewish nation, joined the Jewish tribe. That's not unheard of, especially when it comes to North African Jews. So the European ancestry is interesting because I think this really. Oh, I also like how he aligns the colors with the maps. But you can sort of see, at least for me, you can sort of see the pattern of like our Jewish historical migrations, especially with Ashkenazi. If you're looking at, starting out in Judea, in the Levant area, from coming from the Israelites, and then spreading across the Western Diaspora, across the Mediterranean basin, and then you have the Greek, heavily Greek influence, and some North African influence, and then up the boot of Italy. So you have about 7.6% Italic. So so mixing there in Italy, and then making the Jews migrations up the boot of Italy, up north across the Alps, up to the Rhineland Palatinate, and also to northern France, Germany, France and Germany. That's sort of where Ashkenazi developed in the Middle Ages. And so you have 6.0% Germanic, so a little mixing with the Germanic people. And then you had, as persecutions increased in the Germanic lands, you had eastward migrations to Central and Eastern Europe, to Poland, to Lithuania, to the Baltics, what are now the Baltic states, to places like modern day Hungary, Ukraine, Lithuania. These kinds of places. So what's considered now Russia and basically Eastern Europe, and so 8.6% Slavic, which is I would think is a more recent ancestry, because the Ashkenazi Jews were only in Eastern Europe for hundreds of years, and although there is a theory that the Rhenish Jews, the German Jews who migrated over a certain period, made eastward migrations a little bit at a time, family by family. There was an existing Jewish community there. There were actually two, the Canonic Jews. And there were the Western Canonic Jews, or the Western Slavic Jews in the Czech lands. And then there were the Eastern Slavic Jews in places like Ukraine and Belarus and these types of places. And so that small community might have mixed with the German Jews who were coming east. And so maybe some of that Slavic came from that, and maybe some of the Greek came from that too, because there's a theory that the Canonic Jews came up from Byzantium, from which the Greek areas, and they migrated northwards. So at least that's one theory. So anyway, and then also the 0.8% trace East Asian, probably I would guess from the later period related to being in Eastern Europe, the Slavic ancestry. We know, of the Silk Road, the Radhanites, the trade routes, that they might have, brought some of that maybe Chinese ancestry, a little bit mixing back to Europe when they were going on the trade routes, the Silk Road. So there's China right there. So all Ashkenazi Jews will get a very tiny, small trace percentage of East Asian. So anyway, I'm going to show you now the cool video that he made. And so here you go. Yeah, so really cool video there. And then I'm just gonna now really quick compare my results to some of the averages that I asked them to make. So this is Ashkenazi Poland average. Um, so I'm closest to usually the average in the Global 25 scale. I'm closest to Ashkenazi Ukraine and then Ashkenazi Poland. But you could see Ashkenazi Poland, it's a little bit more Levant, 44.6%. Now this is the average. A little bit more Mesopotamian and Western Iran at 5.4%. A little bit more East Asia at 1.4%. A little less Greek than I do at 23.8%. A little more Italic at 14.6%. And a little less Slavic at 5.8%. And about the same Maghreb, Africa. You can see the Ashkenazi, I'm one individual. They can vary a bit, a few percentage points, but overall pretty similar, right? And the Italic is interesting because I really am a big believer in the Rhineland hypothesis of starting Judeans going to Italy and then up the boot of Italy and then eastward migrations. So that sort of aligns with that. But also the Greek there too. So let's see. I also asked them to compare to the Palestinian samples averages in the Global 25 database. And you can see Palestinian Christians, who make up a very, very tiny, small percentage of the Palestinian population, but they are almost entirely Levantine. It's really interesting. They're up there with like the Lebanese and the Samaritans and the Druze. They are at least these Palestinian Christian averages 83.6% Levant, 5.0% Mesopotamia, Western Iran, 0.6% Caucasus. They get a little bit of Greek there, 8% Greek, and then a little bit of North Africa, Maghreb and Egypt. But Palestinian Christians, this definitely seems to confirm that they were the first Christians who, probably came from Jews. The Jews were the first Christians. So really interesting. And then, but the Palestinian Muslims, at least the average in the Global 25 database, are actually less Levantine than myself individually and the Ashkenazi Poland average. So, which is kind of interesting. They're much more mixed than the Palestinian Christians, and they make up the vast majority of Palestinians in Gaza and West Bank / Judea and Samaria. And they get 38.8% Levant, which really isn't that much. Now, overall, they get 82%, Asian, Middle Eastern, Asian, I guess, including the Caucasus there. But they get 21.6% Arabian. So there must have been a lot of mixing in that 7th century conquest, Arabian conquest of the Levant, when the local natives were converted to Islam. So, a lot of Arabian there, or that's just one speculation. There could have been later migrations from the Arabian areas. But also a lot of Mesopotamia and Western Iran at 11.8%, Caucasus 9.8%, Egypt, a lot of Egypt at 10%, Maghreb 4%, and then some minor Central African and East African. But you could see Palestinian Muslims are almost kind of similar to Ashkenazi Jews, except that, similar amount of Levant, except their mixture outside of the Levant is more from Africa and the Middle East, whereas the Ashkenazi is more from like Mediterranean, mostly, Greek and Mediterranean Europe, and a little bit from Northern Europe. And then I also wanted to see Sephardic Jew. So Sephardic Jew is somewhat similar to Ashkenazi. They tend to get a little bit more Levant at 48.2%, but it's not that much more Levant. And then a little bit more Mesopotamia, Western Iran at 9%, and they don't get the trace East Asian because Sephardic Jews were not in Eastern Europe. And obviously they don't get any Slavic or Germanic because they weren't in Germany or the Slavic areas. They do get the Greek almost at comparable levels to Ashkenazi Jews. So the Greek is probably very ancient. And again, same source population of Jews in the Mediterranean Diaspora. And they do get some of the Italic as well. So that makes me, and also they get the Maghreb, North African. So that makes me think that admixture in Ashkenazi Jews is very ancient from the ancient world. And it's It's when the Jews were, before the split happened between Sephardic and Ashkenazi Jews, and we were the same people. And then I also wanted to compare to East Sicilian, because Ashkenazi Jews tend to get close to Sicilian populations. Well, the East Sicilian, as you can see, if the East Sicilian has much less Levant, at only 19%. Now they get a lot of Anatolia, 30.6%. Now that is related most likely to, I would guess, to Neolithic migrations of Middle Eastern farmers from Anatolia, who populated a lot of the southern European countries. That's speculation, but I would think that that's probably where like a lot of that came from. And then they get a lot of Greek too. They get a lot of Italic. They get some Germanic, and they get some Slavic. And they get a comparable amount of Maghreb, North Africa. Now, that sort of admixture, while they do get less Levant Sicilians, but they also get comparable levels of Greek, Italic, Germanic, and Slavic to Ashkenazi Jews. So that sort of combination makes us close to each other. But Ashkenazi Jews, on average, have a lot more Levant than Sicilians. And thanks for watching.